Welcome once again to the Cow Report. Of course, I'm your host, Chuck Lee, and this is February the 13th, 1995, and it's a beautiful blustery day outside and kind of cool but sunny. And of course, when you look outside, you know that spring is right around the corner. It has to be because middle of February, and of course, things are going to be a little rough in February. You're going to have weather jumping up and down, and then we get into March, and then before you know it, the jonquils will be sprouting, and it'll be spring again, and we'll have newness of life. And isn't it wonderful out there? Of course, now, as usual, this program is live, and it's brought to you by the wonderful people at the Flavin Company, and you know they've sponsored everything from the Republican Party to the U.S. Open and everything in between. And well, you know, you've been calling in and wanting to know where old Freddie's at. Well, a lot of people want to know what's wrong with that Freddie Stafford. Is he afraid to come on the air? So we got old Freddie on the air. He's not with us today because he's still recuperating. We got Freddie on the air, so we're going to interview him a little bit and find out what's the dope on this guy. So what's going on there, Freddie?
Well, I've had pneumonia, you know.
You have?
I've been coughing my full head off.
Cough?
And, I got to get on the road to healing.
Yeah, so
Over this thing because I'm getting sick and tired of being in the house as much as I have and not being able to go down to PAC and to some of the other things I go to.
well, you know your television public is wanting to know where you've been, Fred. You got people backed up. They call in and say, "Where's Freddie at?" So we just wanted to let them know that you're doing okay.
Yeah.
So how much longer do you think it'll be before you can make it back on the air?
I don't know. I was hoping I was going to be on today.
Yeah? What happened?
Well, I haven't been feeling good.
Well, you can feel bad down here.
Well, but I'm also coughing,
Yeah?
and that doesn't help me any.
Well, Freddie, since I got you on the air, I might as well ask you those famous questions to further the advance of United States history and to help the poor uneducated masses out there to learn more about what's going on in this country. We try and stump the stars, and you're my star VIA telephone today, Freddie. So we're going to ask you what happened on tomorrow's date. I'm going to tell you what happened on February 14th, 1929, and then you're going to tell me what that ties in with. 7 members of the O'Banion gang, rivals of the Al Capone gang, are murdered in Chicago by 5 unidentified gangsters in this massacre. What's the name of the massacre and what date is it?
Valentine's Day Massacre.
What was that again?
Valentine's Day Massacre.
All right, 1929, Fred.
Yeah.
It must have been a forewarning of what was going to happen because that's the year the stock market collapsed.
Yeah.
Of course, that was the Roaring '20s, very similar to the Roaring '80s. And so I'm glad you're still able to answer those questions out there, Fred. Of course, you were in New York back in '29, weren't you?
Yes.
Do you remember that day? Do you remember that coming over the air or anything?
I remember that happening. I think I read it, but I didn't hear it on the TV.
All right, Fred. Well,
Radio.
Well, I know you. When I talked to you earlier, you said you wanted to make a statement about something. So go ahead. You got the air there, Fred.
Well, I'm rather concerned about the way our country is going and the way our leader telegram seems to focus on promoting homosexuality, and they seem to forget that in the Bible, and I think we have to go by the Bible and go by what God says, that homosexuality is an abomination, and that no man should lie with another, no woman should lie with another. And he also destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, and it's also discussed in other places in the Bible. But I wanted to talk about how some of our senators vote. And
on the federal level?
On the federal level. You know that Senator Cole and Senator Feingold represent us. And last year, just prior to election, Senator Cole voted 15% of the time with the people and 85% of the time with Mr. Clinton. And the same for Russell Feingold. Now, however, on some of the things they voted for and against, it is noteworthy to notice that Senator Cole voted for NAFTA, he voted for the crime bill, and he voted for GATT. And Senator Feingold voted against all three of those things, which is very interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Now, that was from the Conservative Index, which is printed a couple of times a year in the New American Magazine, which is published in Appleton. And I think something else is going to be coming up here in our country. You know, right here in Eau Claire, the Republicans are going to have a caucus. And I think that we have to make sure that the Republican Party doesn't become a Me Too party. But we already have one party that is anti-life, pro-death abortion, and they are also pro-homosexuality and anti-decency, generally speaking. Now, we got to make sure that we don't have another one of the same type, because what would the sense of being a Republican if they're going to be the same as the Democrats? And there's more to what is going on in our country than just economically, because economically our deficit became what it is with the help of the Republicans as well as the Democrats.
Well, you're so right, Fred, and you, as we both know, you're from New York, so you remember the Rockefeller Republicans.
And I never voted for Mr. Rockefeller in any of the times I had an opportunity to vote there in New York.
Well, you know, there's still a remnant of that left-wing group in the Republican Party, and they always keep trying to revive it. And now the horse they're riding is the pro-abortion horse, and they've picked up a few supporters on that issue. But by and large, nationwide, as you've seen by the latest elections in November, that was a conservative victory, Fred. It wasn't a liberal Republican victory. They've got more conservative pro-life Republicans in there now than ever in the history, or at least in the last 50 years in that House.
I know in New York in '64, when Barry Goldwater ran for president, and they met in Harrisburg, the Republicans did, to try to smooth things out and unite the party. And Mr. Nelson Rockefeller told Barry, well, he guessed he could support him, providing he would consult with him on his appointments to the government.
Yeah.
Barry Goldwater told him, well, he says, he thanked him, and he says, I already believe that I am capable of choosing who I want to have serve in the government. And Nelson Rockefeller walked out of the meeting, taking his entourage with him. And when Barry Goldwater ran, you couldn't get any in New York City. You couldn't get any literature for Barry Goldwater from any of the Republican clubs except the National Women's Republican Club. That's the only one that had Goldwater literature.
Well, you know, Fred, that's kind of the last gasp for that liberal bunch. It's the Eastern establishment, the big bankers, internationalists. They once they get the boot out of the Republican Party, they're going to have to show their true colors, that they are internationalists, and they're not for the American worker. They're for big money, big government, international government, and eventually they'll be exposed for that. And we've got good people like Bob Dornan and Pat Buchanan out there leading the charge, letting the rank and file know what's up with these bums.
You know what, Bob Dornan, his voting record in the Conservative Index is pretty good. 99% this year, and he has a cumulative voting record of 88%, voting with the people.
Yeah.
And
Well, we've seen the results now, Fred, of what's occurred since NAFTA was put into place. We're seeing now that the Mexican government is the front man for the New York and Eastern banks, and saying they got their hand out saying, give us $50 billion or the whole world will collapse, lock, stock, and barrel. Well, the whole world hasn't collapsed, and it's been about a month now they've been begging for that $50 billion, Fred.
I know. And something, we can go into our department stores here in Eau Claire and look at what's happening. And when I worked in a department store after World War II, and I was the assistant manager of the department store, and all the material we got in there, shoes, socks, coats, suits, dresses, everything you could think of, was made in America. It wasn't made overseas. And now, when you go into our department stores, and I have been in most of them, I didn't go to the one to Kmart because through their subsidiaries they sell pornography, and I can buy from somebody who doesn't sell it, although I used to buy materials from Kmart. But Penny's, Kohl's, Walmart, Target, Shopko, Yonkers, Prangy Way, Farm and Fleet. You look at what they got, it's all foreign made.
It's foreign trinkets, Fred. It's just like after World War II when Japan started jumping. Remember Japan started with all our little metal trinkets and toys? Pretty soon those toys turned into vehicles, motorcycles and bicycles and automobiles. And now look who almost controls the American market in some of those areas.
And also, when you look in the stores, you'll find out that most of the cameras, most of the, if not all of the television and electronic stuff is being made overseas.
Fred, the Americans invented the VCR, but you can't find an American-made VCR.
Yeah. I know when my daughters lived here in Eau Claire, they wanted to work in Eau Claire because they liked Eau Claire. And the only thing they could get here in Eau Claire was minimum wage jobs.
Well,
so they went up to the cities.
Well, here's the way we're being blackmailed in America right today, right as we speak, Fred. The threats out there from President Clinton and some of the gullible Republicans that have bought onto this, the reason they're buying onto this NAFTA thing is because they voted for it. So now they got to prop it up and make it, try and look like it's succeeding. So what they've done now is they said, you either give us $50 billion or we're going to let the Mexican hordes flood across the border and take your jobs. Well, the Mexican hordes are already flooding across the border. They have been for several years. They are taking our jobs. They're driving down the wages of the American worker because a Mexican will work for $4.25 an hour, and he'll take that job. So why should an employer pay $7, $8, $9, $15 when they can pay $4.25? So we're losing jobs to Mexico and to around the world to the cheap labor. We're gaining all kinds of people that are willing to work for the minimum wage. So what we're doing is we're destroying the working class of this country. We're destroying the middle class that pays the lion's share of the taxes. We're destroying it day by day. We're letting hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens come across. And finally, Fred, finally, I brought this up in the campaign 6 months ago. I said, send troops to the southern border instead of mustering them out of the Army. Take them out of Europe and Japan and put them on the southern border and get control of the United States of America. We're not a nation until we control our borders, Fred.
I know it. I know it.
If we're going to be called the United States of America, then we should have borders that are secure from any threat, foreign or domestic. Well, this is a foreign threat. The foreign threat are in two areas. They're in illegal drugs coming in and illegal aliens. And those two things are destroying this country, Fred.
I know it. I know it. When I see the lack of jobs here in Eau Claire that pay any living wage, it shocks me. And you can't do much to check to change this, and I know I talked to an electronic manufacturer here in Eau Claire back in the 70s, and he told me he couldn't compete with the stuff that was coming from overseas. And he went down to Mexico, and then he went over to Hong Kong. And last time I saw him, and that was, must be 5 years or so ago, he told me he was making money over there because he could pay low wages, and the people worked. They didn't fool around or anything like that.
Fred, right today in China, probably nighttime over there, they're still working. They've got Christians that they've rounded up off the streets of China and put them into slave labor camps, and they're creating goods that we're finding on the shelves in America.
That's right. And you look, I looked over in Shopko, and lots of stuff there from China. Shoes, the so-called sneakers, or whatever you want to call them, athletic shoes. It's all made in China.
And you know, Fred, it's
In brands, though.
they have a booming economy over there, Fred, but you know who owns a lot of those factories?
Some of the so-called politicians.
The Red Army.
Yeah.
The army itself, the Communist Army of China, controls thousands of different factories and millions of laborers.
Mm.
And the ones that they can't pay a penny or two an hour, they make them work for free because they're slaves. They're in prison camps.
Well, we got to wake up and start to buy stuff that's made in America. Now, in GATT, that's reducing the import duties or taxes on the stuff that's coming in. Well, is that going to change what we find in our department stores here? Is it going to be made in America? When that happening, there's going to be more stuff that's going to pour in here. You won't be able to find anything made in America. And then God help America, because we won't be working.
Well, you know, Fred, some of the stuff that's flooding across the borders from south of the border, that stuff doesn't meet the same standards as an American farmer has to meet. As far as the insecticides and the quality standards, you don't know what's been sprayed on bananas and on apples and
no EPA
and grapes
no OSHA.
And grapes and stuff. You don't know how many chemicals are in there, and that stuff comes across by the semi-truckload and the container load. It's being this country is just being dumped on. And what in the world are our politicians thinking? The American people elect them. The American people pay the taxes to send to Washington. And what are they doing? They're nothing but traitors, Fred.
Yeah. Now, one thing else you ought to talk about. There's a man who's been nominated, Dr. Foster, to be the Surgeon General. He doesn't know right from wrong because he has participated in the killing of babies and promotes the killing of babies.
Fred, this guy is more than that. He's almost a Frankenstein.
He's a liar.
I've got an article here out of the Wanderer. Comes out of St. Paul. It's been in existence for since 1867, Fred. So they
I know, it's a very good conservative Catholic paper.
Well, in the Wanderer, it gives a little insight into what this supposedly new Surgeon General is about. And one thing he did, him and several other doctors did in the 60s and 70s, was sterilize the mentally retarded. Now, I don't know if that's good or bad, but think about it, Fred.
Well,
we got a eugenicist that might be the next Attorney General.
I know, and he should not be approved.
Not Attorney General, but Surgeon General. Excuse me.
Surgeon General.
Also, he performed hundreds of amniocentesis, which is basically, isn't that usually tied in with an abortion?
Yep.
And he admits now to 39 abortions, which is about one per year in his time in office. But has anyone asked the question, Mr. Foster, how many illegal abortions did you perform before 1970, or before the Roe versus Wade decision?
There's another thing there, that college that he headed, the Department of Obstetrics, they lost their approval. They were no longer approved by the medical colleges.
Oh, yeah. Oh, all right.
And that was because of some of the things that went on in his program.
want you to hang on there a minute. I'll take a call here and see what the caller says. I think I can put you on hold. Yeah, just hold on there, Freddie. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air. Oops, I lost him. Still there, Fred?
Yes.
Well, we lost that one there. I hit the wrong button and canceled out that one, so we'll take a call there again if somebody wants to call in. Well, Fred, I found another article.
This one there by Pat Buchanan, and there's also another man who wrote about Buchanan. Buchanan would make a wonderful president, so would Robert Dornan. And that's the kind of people we need as leaders in our country.
Yeah, we need people that aren't going to be wishy-washy like old Newt.
Well, or George Bush.
You know, Newt never was really a conservative. I think he detests even being around conservatives. He's more of a kind of a liberation theologist type. He's got all kinds of weird ideas. Some people say he might even be a Buddhist. That's one rumor I heard, that he might be a Buddhist, that he's not even a Christian.
Yeah. Now, I'm just looking here at his, he had a 78% cumulative voting record in the Conservative Index in the New American Magazine, and he had a 68% for up to November.
Yeah. Well, Freddie, I found an article on another full. You know, we have to be thankful to the Leader Telegram, Fred. You notice after the years of barking on them about putting cigarette ads and tobacco ads in their paper, I noticed they've refrained from doing that over the last year, and we have to give them credit for that, for not promoting that something that's poisoning a large segment of our society. No use to glorify it, but the St. Paul Pioneer Press still gets a lot of their revenue from tobacco. And here's a full-page ad that Marlboro put out, and it's about their latest booklet, and it says all new Marlboro gear. Head out, ride hard, kick back, and gear up. Marlboro gear coming in March. Get the miles. So they want you to save the little, UPC thing there in the corner and save that off your cigarettes so that you can get the gear. What good's that gear going to do you when you're laying in a hospital and they have to cut out part of your lung because of lung cancer?
Yeah.
You're going to wear your cowboy hat laying there in the hospital and say, yeah, I got this from Marlboro. Isn't it wonderful?
Yeah.
They gave me this cowboy hat and this belt buckle and this sheepskin coat. Isn't this wonderful? I can lay here and die of cancer with my sheepskin Marlboro coat on.
Mm.
But down in the corner, Fred, they got the warning. Smoking causes lung cancer, heart disease, emphysema, and may complicate pregnancy. Now, you can't get much plainer than that, Fred. It's bad for you.
Well, I know it's bad for you. Foolish people smoke them.
Yeah. You just think of the money they're throwing away.
They're rebelling. They're rebelling against their body.
Just think of the money they're wasting, too.
I know.
Okay, Fred. Now, here's something you might be interested in there, Freddie, but I'm going to try and take another call here. We keep getting calls, but they're not willing.
Go ahead.
You know, Fred, while this next call's coming in here, I think, coming up here on the 25th of February is Wisconsin. You going to answer that phone in there, Roy?
Mm-hmm.
Who is? You got a call on too? Oh, somebody trying to tie up the line there, Freddie. Okay, Fred.
Oh.
Wisconsin Collegians for Life. It's a statewide organization of college kids that are pro-life. They're having a conference coming up February 25th at UW-Eau Claire. It's called Turning of the Tide. I think we finally got the caller to stay on line too, so we'll take that before they get impatient, Fred. So hang on there. I'll put you on hold. Okay, go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, I was wondering, what if Newt Gingrich wants to be a Buddhist, and what if I want to smoke cigarettes? What if I want to do anything? Isn't it my freedom? There's no law saying Newt can't be a Buddhist. There's no law saying I can't smoke. So
yes, you're so right. And you know something?
What?
If you'll sign a contract or take out an insurance policy that you're not going to be a burden to the rest of the American people for your for your acts of self-destruction, then go ahead.
My acts of self-destruction, how am I smoking being a burden on society by smoking? I don't see how, if I pay my insurance premiums, that is my right to smoke. I am not being a burden on society. And maybe if I'm like a welfare recipient, maybe then I'd be a burden on society, but I'm not.
You will be a burden on society if you smoke long enough, because you'll end up dying in a hospital and we'll be footing the bill for it.
Why will you be footing the bill if I pay my insurances? If they will pay for it, my family will pay for it. How are you personally paying for it, Chuck? You are not.
We have over 400,000 people a year dying from tobacco-related diseases, and quite a percentage of those are dying at the public's expense and on
Quite a few, yes.
on the public dole.
You're saying that it's everyone, Chuck. You're not saying just quite a few.
Well,
I'm not everyone, okay?
hopefully, cigarette smokers will have to take out a special cigarette tobacco insurance policy, which will pay for their death style.
Their death style?
Yes, cigarette smoking is a death style, not a lifestyle. Thank you. Okay, Fred, you still there? Well, I think Fred, you still there?
Yes, and I've known some people who have died from emphysema and who were very heavy smokers most of their life. And they went through hell
Well,
in the last few years of their life.
Well, the facts are in, Freddie. Cigarette smoking and tobacco chewing and pipe smoking will kill you dead in a doornail to the tune of 400,000 people a year. The tobacco companies could care less. All they're worried about is the bottom line. We got state and federal governments that are investing the retirement funds of their employees into that death industry. It's a shame. It's obscene what they're doing. If people want to smoke, let them take out a special insurance policy or sign a contract saying that they will not be a burden to the rest of American society. And they are a burden to the tune of billions and billions of dollars each year, from everything from hospital beds to nursing homes to funeral homes, that the American people are footing the bill for the people that are dying a terrible death, Fred. There's nothing glamorous about lung cancer.
Yeah, one thing you got to figure out, what is in the cigarette that makes people smoke it, outside of the fact that it's addictive? Is it good for them? Does it have any vitamins and minerals in it that's going to help them?
Well,
And if not, why smoke?
it destroys
And
lungs.
Unfortunately, I did smoke for 5 years, and I'm sorry that I smoked those 5 years. I found out after I was smoking a pack or so a day that I didn't have my wind. I puffed.
Well, let me put you on hold, Fred. I know you are kind of windy, so let me put you on hold there, and we'll take another call. Okay, go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Okay, first of all, I'd say they don't outlaw cheeseburgers, but now since you don't want to talk about smoking, let's talk about the Buddhism thing. Who cares if he wants to be a Buddhist? I don't see how that's hurting anything. I think his Buddhist religion probably is teaching a lot more peaceful ethics than your Christian killing the Indians and all the other stuff.
Oh, I killed some Indians. Which ones did I kill?
But you're saying that all smokers are going to be a burden on society. Well, then all Christians killed Indians.
When did I kill any Indians?
Well, when you came to here with your diseases and that from Europe.
I did? Where were you at?
Well, I don't know how I am being a burden on your society by smoking.
Where were you at when I was bringing all these diseases in from Europe?
Not just you, but your kind. If you're generalizing saying all smokers, then I can generalize say all Christians.
Where's your kind from?
My kind?
Yeah.
Maybe they are Native American.
Who?
Geronimo.
Okay, well, thank you. Whoop. Well, Fred, you know, it takes all kinds to make up America. Isn't it wonderful?
Well, some people rebel. They rebel against everything. They rebel against God.
Well, I'm glad. You know something, Fred? It's a shame that you came over here and poisoned everybody and killed Indians and stuff. I never knew that about you.
I was born here.
I never knew that about you, Fred. And that's precisely
I didn't kill the Indians, and I don't like some of the things that the white people did to the Indians. I think they got a raw deal, but still and all, you know, we have reached out to them, and they don't have to live the way they've been living on a reservation. I've known Indians back in New York who were steel workers and other construction workers, and they were doing very well.
Fred, it's the same. It's the age-old thing of if you start feeding the deers, then pretty soon the deers can't survive unless you feed them.
Yeah.
Now, that's what the federal government does to mass large groups of people in this country. They fed them so long that they can't fend for themselves now. That's why we got these rotten Indian reservations where tuberculosis and alcoholism is sky high and diseases are rampant and uneducation. It's because we've created that system. The United States government has created that system that's held down those people.
It's the Indian Welfare Program.
Yeah. Okay, Freddie, now hang on there a minute and let me finish telling about this conference that's coming up. February 25th, Turning of the Tide. The speaker, which will be out at the UW Eau Claire on that date, that's put on by Wisconsin Collegians for Life, is Mary Senander. Has followed euthanasia-related issues since 1963 when she wrote a high school paper on the topic. Her concern about euthanasia led her to explore and then oppose abortion. Since '69, Mary has been an active speaker, writer, volunteer lobbyist, community speaker, and resource person. In 1987, Mary co-founded the International Anti-Euthanasia Task Force in Steubenville, Ohio. She is author of This'll Kill You, Euthanasia and the Right to Die. Mary has been a guest lecturer throughout the United States and Canada. She has written and been the subject of numerous articles in the press. She has also appeared on TV programs including McNeil Lehrer, Focus on the Family, and the 700 Club, as well as on many radio shows. Mary has not shied from debating euthanasia experts, including the notorious Jack Kevorkian. Wisconsin Collegians for Life will be sponsoring this, and for more information, call Wisconsin Collegians for Life at 608-251-6406. And guess what? In this computer age, Fred, they even have email. So if anybody out there wants to write email through the computer and save a little money, it's the email address is WCL, small letters, at macc.wisc.edu. That's the email address. And you can get more information on Wisconsin Collegians for Life. But that is being held right here in Eau Claire, the conference. And let's see, where is it going to be, Freddie? Somewhere on campus. So I'm sure you'll find it. Probably call out to UW and they'll pass that word on. All right, Freddie. You know, I don't know if we got that caller on line 2 or what here. Let me check, Fred. Go ahead, you're on the air.
Yes, sir. I was calling. I had just heard you discussing some figures with regard to smokers and non-smokers, that sort of thing. I was wondering if I could make a comment.
Sure.
Did you read or are you familiar with a recent FDA report that said that smokers cost the average American 22 cents a year, that it costs everybody in America more because of people who smoke? It was recently published in Time and Newsweek this year. Have you seen that?
Only 22 cents, huh?
Well, it's still a significant amount of money when you add it, you multiply that by 250 million people, but it does cost everybody more. The interesting part about that same study is that they said that because even though through life insurance policies, that's where we pay it, people who smoke cost us 22 cents, because of the medical difficulties they have and ultimately end up dying sooner than the average person who doesn't smoke.
The lost work hours, the people that are coughing their heads off can't go to work that day, the cigarette hangovers from smoking 2 or 3 packs in a bar. You don't have to sit there and get drunk. You can get drunk on cigarettes and have a hangover the next day from that and not be able to go to work because you can't take a deep breath in without coughing your head off.
Well, sir, I don't know anything about that. That it wasn't mentioned in the report, but the additional figure was that because these people die earlier, they actually save us $1.53.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't know why dying would save somebody. Maybe it will save a little bit in money, but is that a productive life to die early?
Probably not, sir. But I guess I would I think it takes the legs out from under the fact that they cost us money. I mean, ultimately, actually, in just sheer numbers sense, it saves us money. And I guess the argument I'd like to make is that shouldn't they be allowed to do whatever they want to do so long as it doesn't cost us any money? I mean, I'm not a smoker.
Yeah.
I just am interested in the freedom of individuals. I don't believe.
Well, that theory has been around for years, that if it doesn't hurt anybody else, then why can't I do it? And they've said that about a plethora of different issues, and but there is a cost. There is a cost when somebody's an alcoholic. There's a cost when somebody is a tobacco user to extremes, and it kills them. There's a cost to the rest of society, and there are other people that are harmed, family members, associates. There is a terrible cost involved with these so-called victimless, self-induced deaths that we have in this country, and there is a terrible cost to it. Now, of course, the funeral homes make a bang-up business out of it, and I'm sure they would probably not agree with me on that, because if 400,000 people a year are dying just from tobacco's effects, that's 400,000 funerals.
Well, but those are funerals they would have dealt with anyway. I mean, everybody's going to die. The question is when.
Yeah.
You say the loss of freedom is a greater cost?
I don't know if that's considered a freedom, and I don't think they're losing their freedom. Just let them make sure that they pay for their own death style and not the rest of us. And I don't know if I agree with that article that you read. I don't know if that's because the American Cancer Society, the federal government, is pumping billions of dollars into research into cancer. We've got agencies that all they do is study the effects of tobacco, and on one hand, and they take in tobacco money on the other hand. And
but it's the government that put that report out.
Well, unfortunately, I don't agree with it. So what can I say? Which government? What agency?
The FDA.
They said that it's great. It's better for people to die because it saves the rest of us $1.50.
That wasn't their specific conclusion. They just said statistically the fact is smokers cost us an additional 22 cents a year because they smoke, but they save us $1.53 a year because they smoke, because they die sooner. It drew no specific conclusion. It just said factually smokers are not a cost to society from a dollars and cents standpoint. That it didn't actually cost the average taxpayer any more money because people were allowed to smoke. So
Well, I'm not saying take away their right to smoke, but let's also not put the rest of the people on the hook. And I would say that those statistics are flawed because they're not taking into account all the billions of dollars used in research and all the misery that it brings to families that lose family members from the effects of tobacco. And I would say that it does. It costs insurance companies. It costs the American people in many ways. It might not show up at the bottom line.
Hey, let's say I agree with you then. Let me ask you this, because I'm not a person who, unfortunately, I could stand to lose a few pounds. Looking at you, sir, you look like you might not meet the regular insurance agency's height to weight ratio. Should you be forced to purchase an insurance policy because you live a lifestyle that is not the healthiest, and therefore you might cost me money because you don't live a healthy lifestyle?
Now, how can you tell by TV how tall I am or how wide I am?
I don't know,
TV
so I'm
distorts
just asking
people.
that question.
See, I might be 7 foot.
Let's not say you. Let's say somebody who isn't living the most healthy lifestyle because they choose not to live the most healthy lifestyle. Should they also be forced to buy an insurance policy that indemnifies them against any health problem they might have, so that we don't have to pay for their choices?
Perhaps they should. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we take care of that. All right, Freddie, I got you on hold there. You can. Are you still with us, Freddie?
Yes. Just reading here in the Family Research Council publication, the newsletter, by Gary L. Bauer, who's the president, and he's talking about Goals 2000. Has added a host of new federal bureaucracies, including the National Goals Panel, National Education Standards Improvement Council, National Skills Standards Board. For decades, ever since the creation of the Federal Office of Education in 1960, the federal government has existed, it would not become involved in writing and establishing curricula. Over time, however, the insistence has been repeatedly compromised until with this legislation is completely outgrown. Now, there are 31 standards of political correctness in this, in K through 12. Not one of them mentions our Constitution. George Washington makes only a brief appearance and is never recognized as our first president. The founding of the radical environmental group, the Sierra Club, and the National Organization of Women now are both described, but not a word is mentioned about the first gathering of Congress. It goes on to say that the founding of Concerned Women in America, the largest conservative organization in the country, larger than now, totally ignored. That's a good organization. Okay. Robert E. Lee is omitted. So are Thomas Edison, the Wright brothers.
Yes,
Daniel Webster.
It's unfortunate.
Senator Joseph McCarthy, and McCarthyism is mentioned 19 times. The Gettysburg Address is mentioned but once, and Paul Revere not at all.
Okay, Fred. Well, that just shows you that they're rewriting history.
Yeah.
All right, Fred. I got a free gift here that I'm going to give out, and it's something you might recognize, Fred. But this is a deck of playing cards for people who like to play solitaire, and it's got a little elephant on it. I'm going to give that away to the person that can answer this question right before 3 o'clock. And the question is, and it's happened on February 14th, 2 different dates. There was 2 states that joined the Union. I want to know what those states are. You can get this little elephant.
February 14th, what year?
Just, Fred, you can't answer it now. This is
I won't.
But you get these free cards here. They haven't been opened, and they got a little elephant on them. And there's 2 states that joined the Union on this date at different times.
Oh.
One in 1859.
Yeah.
It was the 33rd state. And the other one was in 1912, and it was the 48th state. Matter of fact, it was the last one to join before Iowa, or not Iowa, but before Hawaii and Alaska. So there's 2 states that joined on February 14th, one of them in 1859, the other one in 1912. And you can pick this up down at the courtesy desk at Public Access, and we'll just leave it out there for the person that wins. And then I'll give you a chance to tour the Public Access studios. So there you have it. Now, if you want to call in and give me the answer to them questions, and that's our way of just helping support the humanities, Fred, and try and build an interest in history in America. Okay, Freddie.
Okay.
Now, you might want to comment on this, Fred, but I'm going to do a little chalk talk here on equality in America, Fred. And you know, I've coined that phrase, the American Dream Index, and how in this country we're having a problem keeping that index up so that people can strive and reach the American dream in this country. And of course, now after 30-some years of the Great Society programs of Kennedy and Johnson, we've got more poor people now, something like 39 million in this country, more now below the poverty level than we had in 1960. So evidently something's going wrong. But equality in America, Fred, says that all men are created equal, and which that meant also was all men and women are created equal.
Yeah.
So at one time there was equality in this country. Well, hopefully we would think there was. At least they wrote a constitution that said that. But since then, because of these special rights that we've handed out all over the country, now we have no longer is everybody equal, Fred. Now there are special groups that have more rights than others. And in certain states and localities, we have, and in most and the federal government, in a lot of cases, have passed laws which gives minorities more rights than the average person. Then down the line, we started adding women and saying they're a minority, and we're going to give them special rights that we're not going to give the rest of society. Then we started letting the foreigners come in by the droves, and we started giving them special rights. As soon as they got across the borders, they got special rights. Then, Fred, if you were a veteran of any of the wars, you got special rights over the rest of society. And then, of course, If you were a homosexual, you got special rights in certain parts of the country. And of course, Wisconsin was the first state in the Union to classify homosexuals as a special class. So, what do we have left, Fred?
Well,
We got the minorities. We got the blacks and the Asians and any minority you can think of that's not Caucasian. They've got special rights. Women, the veterans groups get special rights.
well, I know if you want to talk about women, I love women. I respect them. I admire them, most of them anyway. And but one thing I have found, believe strongly in, a woman is not as strong as a man. And I think about my mother, my two wives, my daughters, and most of the women that I know are not as strong as the men. So I don't think that women should be put in armed services, especially to fight a war.
So, Fred, here's the new equality now is up here. Here's the new equality in America. Through the special jobs that are given out to the minorities, they get jobs ahead of everyone else. The equal rights and all that, where you have to
Well, that shouldn't be.
quotas that are met. So the new equality is up here now, Fred, but there's one group in America that just is not equal now with the new equality.
Yeah.
And that one group is the white male, non-military male in this country. In other words, the male that has not went to the military is now the only true minority in this country. They are the ones that are unequal now because they haven't been raised up to the new equality. So the white male in this society now is the one that's the most attacked. Just like the guy called in and said, you Europeans came over here and raped and poisoned the Indians and all this stuff. This is the group that's under attack in this country, the white male. And especially the male that is not in the military, because if you're in the military, at least you get some benefits that way, Fred.
Yeah.
So if you haven't been in the military and you're just a white person, you are in trouble.
Well, you know,
You're
when
not
you go
equal
into
anymore.
the military, you go where they want you to go, you do what they want you to do, and you're not paid the highest pay either. You're generally getting about minimum wage.
Well, the white male is under attack in this country, Fred, because it's the only group left now that is not getting special rights. Matter of fact, they're the ones that are discriminated against on a daily basis. And of course, I think that it's a way of punishing us for when we killed the Indians 200 years ago or something. But I didn't kill any Indians, and you didn't.
No.
And so if Martin Luther King talked about equality in this country, and it spurred this here now to where we have all the classes except the white male up here at this new equality, and now we're discriminating against the white male. It's unfortunate, Fred, but true.
No.
Okay, I'm going to see if we still got that call on line 2, Fred, so hang on. Okay, you still there, caller?
Yes, sir.
All right.
How are you doing today?
Well, pretty good.
What discrimination have you faced today?
Pardon?
What discrimination have you faced today, Chuck?
I guarantee you when you take a test, young man or lady, I don't know which one you are, but if you've taken a test, especially for a federal job, you can get 100. And if you're a veteran, you get 110 or 105, and he or she gets the job. It's one way of being discriminated against. I have seen people come in from other countries and get jobs with the United States Post Office over Americans. It's another way of discrimination. There are special rights in housing and stuff that whites cannot receive. In welfare, a single white male cannot get on AFDC or some of these benefits.
Well, I understand that. I'm a single white male, Chuck.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just asking what you face today.
Today?
Yeah. Well, I mean, no, you've answered my question so far. I mean, that's what I was looking for.
All I'm saying is bring the white males up and let's have real equality. Basically, we'll be back to where we started before all this baloney came down the line from the leftist Congress and the left-wing central planners out in Washington. Now we've got a situation where everyone's equal except the European white males.
So would you rather we went back to the days before women could vote?
Did I say that?
No, I'm asking.
No.
I didn't say it. I
but there's
asked.
no reason why to take this 40, 50 million people here and say, okay, we're going to discriminate against them because they're white and they've got a better chance of getting this and that. So we're going to give these special rights and give out scholarships to minorities, and we're going to take 52% of the population, which is women, and we're going to declare them a minority. And we're going to take the 48% of the population that's male and declare them in the majority, which is totally upside down. So there is inequalities now in this country. It's what they call it, reverse discrimination now is a reality to basically European white males that haven't been in the military.
Yes, sir.
So what do you think about that?
Well, I can understand very well being a young male. I've been in the military personally, though. So.
Well, you got one notch up, and you can get
Well,
some.
it doesn't really help me much, though.
Well, you can be buried in a cemetery. You can
But I did work my 6 years for it.
You can get veterans benefits at hospitals. You can get.
I did work my 6 years for it, though.
Mhm. Well, a lot of other people have worked their whole lives to help, to help raise up these other people through taxes and stuff too.
But I work and pay my Social Security, and
right.
so I'm helping people in essence
Well,
myself.
what I'm saying is, you as being in the military, though, you've got a whole group of rights now and things. It's kind of you can still go and shop at the military stores, can't you?
Yes, I can. But when I was in the military, myself being white, I was a minority. There are more minorities, as we would say, like blacks, Puerto Ricans, and such as in the military.
I know, but what I'm basically saying is if you haven't been in the military, or you don't meet the qualifications of any of these so-called minorities, including 52% of the population, which is women, that is classified as a minority, then you are the new group in this country that actually is being discriminated against on a day-to-day basis in work, in education, and in many areas of society and in life now. The white male, basically the European white male, is a discriminated class. And it's time, if we're going to have equality, to eliminate that and quit putting all these special interest groups ahead of the rest of society and then ending up with a class that is genuinely being discriminated against.
This is a little off the subject now, but I've also wondered, how do you feel about gun control?
Gun control. I'm all for going into the crime-infested rat nests in some of these public housing and in inner cities and the gang-infested areas of Los Angeles and Minneapolis and Milwaukee and Chicago, and literally taking the guns away from the gangsters that have no right to have them, and to kill and maim and injure a certain segment of society. Now, as far as taking a gun away from a law-abiding farmer or somebody that has a gun in their home for their self-protection, no. But for the outlaws, I have no problem with it.
Yeah, but I understand your point. I agree with you totally. But the problem we have is that usually the gangsters or the criminals and that don't attain their guns by legal means. They usually are stealing them from the law-abiding.
That's why I'm not saying take the guns away that way. You're not going to do it by shutting down the gun stores and stuff.
Well, I know, but that's what we're having done today in society.
Right.
They're having your 3-day wait.
They're going about it the wrong way. If they want to see, when authority goes up against 50,000 gang members in California, they're not going to go in there because they know they could lose their lives.
Yeah.
That's why you might have to send in the National Guard and go in there and disarm the 50,000 gang members, because they have no right to be roving in these gangs, burning down the city, killing people, robbing people, destroying property. They have no right to do that, not in a civilized society. So one of the main things that the government is created for is to make sure that the people are safe in their homes and safe and secure. And we've tried to rely on the authorities to take care of that for us. And too many people have had their houses busted in and murdered and raped and their throats slit and everything else, waiting for the 911, waiting for somebody to come and rescue them. Well, the first line of defense is an individual that has a firearm in their own home to protect their own home. And that's basic instinct to protect your home and your family. And if the government takes away that right, they're going to have a civil war in this country. On the other hand, though, we don't need to have lawless, roving bands of thugs and criminals out there killing and maiming and burning down buildings and pulling people out of semi-trucks in broad daylight at an intersection and smashing their heads in with bricks and shoving things up their rear end like knives and pool cues and slitting people's throats and stuff. That is mayhem. Things like that should not be allowed to go on. And if it takes force from the Army or National Guard or beefed up law enforcement, then fine, they should do that to get those groups under control, because that is a rebellious situation. That is basically guerrilla warfare that's going on in this country, so you need to disarm those elements.
Yeah, but now in society, the media is portraying it as we need to have this and that done, so Congress is passing the laws about their assault rifle bans, and everyone's thinking, well, yeah, this is doing the job, but it's not. They haven't really done it. They haven't done anything but just appease the public.
Well, the Congress is tiptoeing around that subject. Newt is trying to beat around the bush. He's not willing to introduce that, and you could see that kind of be slid to the back burner or even slid off the burner and not even be dealt with before the 96 elections. I guarantee you, though, that the NRA and other groups are going to say, you do something about it now, and there is some festering going on that they're trying to force Newt into bringing this to the floor of the House and changing the crime bill that was just came into effect about 4 months ago, making that retroactive to take back some of those assault rifles and let the people have them that are law-abiding citizens, and that's the right of each individual in this country, is to protect their home and their family.
Okay, one last question. When you were going up for election this year, I read in the paper something about you being convicted of drug use.
Yeah.
Like a few years ago. Could you please explain that? I can hang up now, but would you please explain that?
All right, yeah. Basically, it was a marijuana charge. I was involved in a federal conspiracy to import marijuana. That's basically what it was. That's why I can still run as being a federal charge. I can run for a federal office, but the various states have different laws on whether you can run for state office or not. And in this state, if you have a felony, you cannot run. So it was basically a marijuana charge, and that's what it was. Okay. It was about 17 years ago, something like that. All right, well, we got just enough time left to talk about the upcoming Eau Claire County Republican Party elections that are next Sunday. I don't know where they're held this year, but there's supposedly over 600, close to maybe 700 people that have joined the Eau Claire County Republican Party. As well, as you know, there are two factions plus a moderate wing in the party that are scrapping over control of the Eau Claire County Party, and what it has created as it's filled the ranks of the Republican Party, but there's probably more like three factions. There's a so-called Christian faction, which is led by Harlan Reinders and Winnie Close. There's a more liberal Rockefeller-type faction headed by Don Alexson and some other people, Doug Knight. And they will be at loggerheads. They'll be voting on the upcoming chairman, vice chairman, secretaries, and treasurers for the next 2 years of the local party. As you know, I don't belong to the Republican Party anymore, at least the county party. I still have affiliations with the state and federal parties, but I do not belong to the Eau Claire County Republican Party. So the upcoming elections, there is choices to be made, and as an outside observer and weighing the effects of what I've seen over the last 2 years, I would suggest that anybody that's watching that will be going to that, I would suggest that the people to vote for in the upcoming election, in my opinion, my humble opinion, because the Eau Claire County Party is not a church, it is a Republican Party, that they should vote for Harry Hertel for chairman of the party for the next 2 years. He's a capable individual, a great lawyer, and he is pro-life. I think he'll lead the party. I think he'll bring the party back together enough to where they can start electing people on the county level again. Well, thank you, and we'll see you again next week right here on the Cow Report. Thanks for being on, Freddie boy. I hope you'll be back next week. Adios. Welcome once again to this edition of the Cow Report. Of course, we are coming to you live from the beautiful downtown L.E. Phillips Memorial Library and taco stand. And of course, with me, as usual, is my rusty and trusty sidekick, Fred, the True Stafford.
Howdy.
Glad to see you again, Fred. How you been?
Oh, I've been better.
Well, we're glad to see you're up and running again. And,
Say, what have you been drinking there?
well, I've
Your eyes are kind of bloodshot.
been up for 2 days studying for a final.
Yeah.
Anyway, of course, this also doubles as the annual meeting of the Loyal Order of the Raccoons. So if there's any of you raccoons out there, you can just go along with us because this is our annual meeting. All right, Fred, we got a lot to talk about tonight. Boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about. Of course, we always do on this show.